Welcome to What's on Your Radar, the 30-minute fast-paced live stream that shares senior cybersecurity professional insight on topics that are intriguing to us. My name is Gerald Auger, and we are broadcasting from Simply Cyber, the YouTube channel designed to help you make and take a cybersecurity career further, faster. I'm joined by Linda Rust and Eric Taylor today. If you are looking to get in the field or already practicing, I guarantee you there will be value delivered to you today. Get active in chat. We'd love to hear your thoughts on these matters. Now let's get into the stream and find out what's on Eric and Linda's radar. Hello, good afternoon, y'all. How you doing?
What's going on?
Awesome.
Nothing. I'm loving it, loving it, loving it, loving it. So much energy, so pumped to be here. Now, Linda, as our rotating guest seat, I would love to hear what's on your radar.
Well, it is great to be here for my maiden voyage on What's on My Radar. I'm Linda Rust with SecureThink. I'm a senior security strategy advisor to Fortune 500 C-suite types, board directors, business owners. And what's on my radar is the CMMC timeline acceleration that was announced on May 9th. So let me do a quick screen share here.
Yep.
Because a picture is worth 1,000 words. And let's unpack. Can you see that? Okay. Yep. So let's unpack what I just said. CMMC, first of all, we've got a big audience, so maybe not everybody's familiar with that jargon. It stands for the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. And
Linda, real quick, is there a way to tighten it up? It just looks a little fuzzy.
Oh.
Are you seeing it fuzzy, Eric?
Yeah, it looks very pixelated.
Very pixelated.
Okay. It reminds me of those old, you remember back in school where you had the laminated sheets going up on the projector and everything? Kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, let's try.
Showing my age a little bit there.
Let's do a window and see if that's any better instead of the full screen.
Yeah, if you got one of those ultra wide ones, it's going to do that.
How's that? Any better?
It's a little pixelated still. Huh? Yeah.
All right. Well, then I'm not sure. You know what? Maybe we just talk through it and not screen share. How's that?
That could work.
Not spend a lot of time talking about pictures. It's fine. If anybody does want to see the picture, I'm going to say a couple places you can find it. I did a post on this yesterday on LinkedIn, and unlike some people, I do not post multiple times in a given day or in a given week. So it shouldn't be Linda Rust, just Rust like you don't want on a car, either on LinkedIn or go to SecureThink. It's like security, but then the T turns into think.com. And there's the field notes. I did a post on this too. So you can, especially from my website, from securethink.com, you can download basically. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Is that any better there?
Oh, yep. Much.
Oh, good. I'm glad we did belt and suspenders here. So thank you for teeing that up, Jerry.
Mm-hmm. My pleasure.
Okay. So what the deal here is, let me start. CMMC, in case not everybody in your audience is familiar with it, Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. What that is the U.S. Department of Defense has had cybersecurity requirements in the contracts that they have with all of their suppliers since at least 2017. And what they're finding is that only about 25% of those requirements are really being implemented. So they're not happy about that. And what CMMC, the big change CMMC introduces is it says, these companies can no longer self-assess their compliance with these requirements and self-attest. What CMMC introduces is third-party certification. And so you can imagine that a lot of companies, the Department in the defense industrial base, it is estimated there are 300,000 companies in total, of which approximately 80,000 are expected to have to comply with this requirement. And so a lot of companies have been, just avoiding the work, if you will, and avoiding cybersecurity as a topic. And so the timeline on this has been really interesting. The big news, of course, why I'm here, why this is on my radar, is that there was an announcement on May 9th that again accelerated, as in moved up the time by which companies are expected to be assessed by third parties. And so the most recent announcement moves the date to May of 2023. But what's really important for those of us in this space is you can see on the left side of that chart, when CMMC was first introduced in January of 2020, the date by which this requirement was supposed to show up in all contracts. So if you do anything with the DoD, this is in your contract. And if you have subcontractors, it applies all the way down the supply chain, all tiers. And the certification is expected to apply to all those companies too. So the original date that was announced for this requirement was back in January of 2020. They said it's going to be in all contracts October of 2025. And as you can see on that chart, they've progressively been announcing more dates that are closer and closer in to where the most recent change makes it 2.5 years earlier than what was originally announced. Am I at my 5-minute limit? Because if not, we can go to the right side of the screen.
Okay. Yeah, you can jump in the right side. We'll
Okay.
This is good.
So what really kind of adds to the interest level, if you will, if you're observing this space, is it's one thing to say, okay, the timelines are moving up, but what the scale of this is also one of the reasons that a lot of the companies that fall into this group in the defense industrial base, the scale. So what they're saying now is, hey, the Department of Defense has been doing a few assessments here and there to the tune of 100 a year maximum. You're not going to cover 80,000, companies with a capacity that's only 100 a year. So they're kind of, staring down the Defense Department and saying, we're going to kind of keep ignoring you. But the Department of Defense has put in place now this accreditation body, CMMC AB as it's called, and they have started to really gear up. And I'm not going to read everything that's on the right side of the slide, but the bottom line is the infrastructure that's needed to put more feet on the street to be able to assess more companies. The infrastructure is, in fact, being built and things are happening. And for the longest time, that was always quiet on the Western Front with regard to that. And then, like I said, things are picking up.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. This is a topic, Linda. I know it's a radar item, but we could do a full hour on this, really. So I see a couple questions in chat, guys. Lupe and James. So my question, Linda. So I thought the entire reason that they blew up CMMC was because of kind of, whether it was proven or not, essentially the corruption that was associated with the programs to become an accreditation, like C3PAO, and the training that you had to pay for that was exclusive to these organizations, and all of that piece. I thought that's why it blew up. But what you're saying here is that all of that is still going to be the requirements around what determines independent audit. And let me ask you, is the scope, well, please comment on that. And then is the scope of the audit still all levels of CMMC compliance, or is it only the new level 3, AKA the old level 5?
Okay. So first and foremost, everybody who speaks about this, including the officials from the DoD themselves, and in the link that I posted yesterday, I have links to articles and I declare all my sources. So if you really want to hear the backstory, the long form, if you will, check out those posts or ping me on LinkedIn later, and I can answer more questions in detail. What's going on right now is the officials from the DoD CIO's office are going through a federal process, which is called rulemaking. And they have been speaking about what their intention is going into rulemaking, but rulemaking is shall we say, a compromise process. So what's going to actually finally come out at the end of rulemaking is really anybody's guess right now. We can only work on the information we're given, which is going into rulemaking. The DoD has certain intentions, okay? And those have been documented in various, they've been giving talks and articles are being written about those talks. That's as formal, if you will, as that gets until we actually start. So the proposed rule, we should see sometime in, we hope to see sometime in, I have to think about this, they announced it in March of 2023. Okay, is we're going to finally see that. And then 60 days later, they expect that it's going to go into effect. So we won't know until March of 2023 what the final deal is. What we know going into it is, so you were asking about, first of all, the ecosystem, and then you were asking about the scope in terms of who does this impact, what companies does this impact. So with regard to what is called the CMMC ecosystem, who are the stakeholders? Right now, no, the accreditation body is definitely still in place. The DoD still refers to them. The DoD still is saying they are the final authority in terms of how organizations such as you mentioned, Gerald, the C3PAOs or the assessors, that's all going to still happen through the accreditation body. What the accreditation body has been saying is these authorized classes with authorized materials and authorized examinations, that's all still happening.
All right. And is it going to be applicable to all levels of CMMC compliance or just the top level?
So I haven't split hairs here for people who've been watching this space. There was what was originally announced in January of 2020 was something called CMMC 1.0. And Jerry, what you're referring to, of course, is that November of 2021, the DoD announced CMMC 2.0. And 1.0 had 5 levels. 2.0 has 3 levels. What is expected is that, first of all companies, and not even just if you do work with the Department of Defense, if any company that does work with the federal government has a set of requirements that are 15 in number, and those 15 requirements apply to everybody today, now in their contracts, period. What we know is most of them aren't implementing it. But that's equivalent to CMMC level 1. So everybody, you don't have to be a DoD contractor. Theoretically, you're already supposed to be doing level 1 anyway. And then they're expecting about 80,000 to be at level 2 under the new regime. And it's a big TBD what's at level 3, the former level 5. How many it applies to, we're not even sure what the controls are at that level yet.
Okay, thank you. And I'll let Eric speak since I've just been dominating this. I'm just so particularly interested, and this is normally a 30-minute show, but there's been a lot of ask to go a little long today. So if Linda, if you have time, we will, and if you don't, then we'll just speculate after you get off. Eric, what are your thoughts on Linda's radar?
Do you have like a spicy warning? Because this is a very, very hot topic. There we go. Because it's going to get there. I'll keep it PG-13 as much as I can. But those who've been following, let me educate those who have not been following CMMC. I liked CMMC 1.0. It brought in a layer of security and fundamentals into people who were doing work with the prime and subprime industry for the DoD contractors. It was going to, as one of our buddies, I hate to use the term sometimes, but it does apply, Matt Lee over there at PAX 8, it was going to raise the tide for all ships. Okay, got it. I'm on board. I was going through self-attestation of CMMC 1.0 ourselves because I'm wanting to get into that space. What the DoD and the C3POs or C3, I keep thinking Star Wars every time I say it, C3 APOs or whatever it is, the auditors.
Same as FedRAMP. FedRAMP uses the same acronym, C3PAO.
Yeah. So they started going through some of the assessments and are like, these guys can't keep up with this. Plus, the people who are already in 800, 170, 171 only had 13 extra controls to implement to get to CMMC level 4. And they said, oh, we can't do this. We can't overcome this hurdle because it takes us X amount of time and X amount of dollars, because they were going through effing self-acetation. They were just saying, oh, yeah, we're 800, 171 or 853 or whatever it is, and not really applying to kind of like what Linda was saying, that it's just really, really bad. So I do not like what the DoD is doing. I do not like this. I am very much against CMMC 2.0. I wish when you come from my world, from the DFIR side, and you want companies to be more secure, and you definitely want our federal government to be more secure and people to look up to, why are we taking cybersecurity a step back, almost 6 steps back, if you will, and allowing we're just going to implement 800, 171 and just make sure everybody's actually doing that. And don't even, even the auditors, I really feel bad for them because they went through freaking hurdles. It dropped metric tons of time and money to get to that certification so they can audit that. And they, no offense, they just had to piss away that money because it was freaking, it was pointless now, right? So, you know, I don't
You
like
mean the
it.
registered practitioners, the RPs?
Yeah, the
Oh, okay.
RPs, those are all gone. I mean,
No,
they
yeah.
can
Well, the
still be, but
RPs.
what they had to go through for the 1.0 version of it, it's
No, so I gotta, Eric, I gotta kind of so the RPs are, so there's RPs and there's assessors, that's separate. The
yes.
RPs are the people who can work with companies to prepare them for this. And their training is actually really nominal. It's only like 20 hours of training, and they still there and they can renew. But the assessor track, those of us, and I am among those who are on the assessor track. Until now, it's only been provisional assessors and provisional instructors, and that's still the track I'm on. Is still provisional because what will make it go from provisional to official, if you will, fully certified, will be when the formal exams, the professional center type high stakes exams, when they come available. Then those of us that have provisional status will have to take those official exams to become fully certified. So first of all, the provisional assessors, provisional instructors are still very much in place. I'm currently in training to become one of those, so that's still happening. The intention is as soon as the exams are available that we will take those exams and move into full certification. The schedule, and this is on the right side of that slide that Jerry had up before, the schedule for, it's one of the lines anyway, schedule for those
Yeah, I got you.
exams, the first step. So there are 3 steps to that career path, if you want to call it that. The certified CMMC practitioner is the first, and then there's an assessor, and then there's an instructor. So the CCP, the professional exam, is supposed to go into beta in August, with the public version of that exam available in October. They have not yet announced dates for the assessor. But all of that's still in place, and so the people, the cost to be a provisional assessor or instructor it's a few $1,000s, but it's a fraction of what people are really going to have to go through for the full certification process. But we haven't wasted our money because we just roll into the certification process. So it's actually not, I don't know. I actually feel like the provisional program has been the fast track to getting fully certified. I'm not saying it's cheap.
So I have a question, Linda. So, because I looked into this personally, because I have a ton of federal IT audit experience, and I was like, oh, I'll just become an assessor and like make some, side money or whatever. Are they still requiring you to have so you get certified as an assessor, but the CMMC 1.0, when I read it, said that you have to basically have someone shadow you on X number of assessments, and you have to pay for them to be there. And the numbers added up. Is that requirement still there, or can you just be certified and go off and do the work?
My understanding about that requirement is it's under it's being reevaluated, but they haven't come out firmly. As I just said, the only thing that's firm right now is the provisional part of that. So the final rules are still TBD.
So here's going to be a stab that's going to maybe upset some people, but this is the way I am, and I mean no disrespect to it, but if CMMC is supposed to be for the DoD, why the hell is the DoD not doing the audits?
Well, they are today, and actually they're my understanding is that they have so that's called the DIBCAC, the Defense Industrial Base Cybersecurity Assessment Center. DIBCAC.
Yeah, but the people who are performing the audits and doing a certification of compliancy are not the DoD. They are independent. They're independent.
They
firms.
will under CMMC today. So the organizations that are able to do assessments today are number one, DIBCAC it's themselves, and DIBCAC is the only one, and they are currently, in fact, I've had clients who have gone through their process. The DIBCAC assessment. The DIBCAC is also the organization that is assessing the C3PAOs, and C3PAOs can never audit other C3PAO candidates. Only the DoD can audit C3PAO candidates. So so that is happening. There was another point. Oh, I loved your point, Eric, about how you were much more of a fan of CMMC 1.0 and much less of 2.0 because of what was removed. Generally, it's referred to as the Delta 20. There were 20 requirements in CMMC 1.0 that did not come from the NIST standard 800-171. And in going from 1.0 to 2.0, they removed those 20 requirements. So here's the thing I want to reassure you about is reassure you. The main reason I'm not losing sleep over it, though I'm not any happier than you are about that change. The emphasis of CMMC is very definitely, well, 800-171 and CMMC is confidentiality. The DoD wants reassurance that the members of the Defense Industrial Base, those companies, when they handle the information, that they're keeping it confidential. Now, as cybersecurity professionals, we know that integrity and availability are the two other aspects of cybersecurity. Confidentiality does not stand alone. So for the DoD to put all this emphasis on confidentiality, that's exactly what you're talking about. You know, the backups are gone and the recovery is gone, and like, what gives with this, right? The way that the DoD has said they're going to be dealing with this under the way they're handling things and structuring them now under CMMC 2.0 is that they're going to work with NIST to make the changes in 800-171. Now, as many of us that are watching this space know, we are expecting Rev 3. Right now, the standard of 800-171 is Rev 2, and we're expecting Rev 3 to come out yet this calendar year. And we're expecting changes, and we're expecting, frankly, more of the controls, including especially some number of the Delta 20 that got dropped. Many of those controls are expected to be seen now in Rev 3, at which point they will automatically become part of CMMC.
One of the things with CMMC that I asked you the question, is it going to apply to all three tiers? I'd love your thought on this, Linda. So when I look at these things, I'm going to share, like, this is just some website that I found that maps this, right? And I know it's hard to see, chat, so please don't blow me up on it. The point is, what we're looking at is the controls that kind of compose the 800-171 compliance, right? And there's different levels for each tier, right? Level 1, CMMC level 1, level 2, level 3, etc. Anyways, here's my thing. And I've never really been able to reconcile this. If I'm a level 1 organization, because I don't really do a lot of stuff, or I'm a sub to a sub, so I'm making twist ties that are used in the ball bearing factory that's being used to make the M1 Abrams tank, right? Or you know what I mean? Like, I'm being playful, but you get what I'm saying. And I'm a 10-person company or 20-person company. I'm never going to be able to afford the controls to implement to be compliant with this. So my question really is the expectation that those businesses will not be able to participate in that market any longer? Because like a 10-person company cannot afford a SIM and staff to run the SIM, or an MDR outsourced service, which is going to be like, $150,000 a year if their gross revenue is like under $1 million or something, like giving, and that's just one control that they have. I could do a whole crosswalk on it, but the essence of my question is, small businesses won't be able to afford the level of security that is required to meet this level of compliance. And maybe that's the right answer. Maybe it's then they don't deserve to play in that space because they can't reach a certain level of assurance. Do you have any thoughts around that kind of, I guess, double-edged sword or that piece?
Well, so first of all, I'm absolutely not here to be what do you call it, to defend anybody, or to, I can, in as much as I'm on the track to become a trainer and instructor, that makes me, I'm training to be, if you will, a spokesperson and a representative of this. But that doesn't mean I personally advocate a lot of the trade-offs that are being made. Yeah. That's one of the, but can I try to share with you some of the resources that are available to us all to understand what is the mindset of the folks who are putting these rules in place, right? So I have worked for very large enterprises. My anchor client in this in the defense industrial space is a Fortune 500 with 13,000 employees. So kind of on the large end of the spectrum. But I also work with some organizations that are much, much smaller than that. And one of the classic cases of a good friend of mine in this space owns a company who's got 50 employees and makes parts that are used in airplanes. But so what the DoD is saying is, if really important information, sensitive information, so it's called CUI, right? You've probably heard that acronym, controlled unclassified information. If my friend who's got 50 employees and is making these widgets for the airplanes, if her ability to make those parts requires the use of controlled unclassified information, then here's what the DoD says about this. Because, by the way, the very objections you're raising came up in rulemaking in 2013 and again in 2017. So this rulemaking process that I said CMMC 2.0 is going through right now, that's parts of this have already happened. And so there is precedence. And our mutually good friend, Jacob Horn, did a fabulous video on this. If people want to find it, it's called The History of CMMC. And it's a really great 1 hour for anybody who wants some background about how this all came to be as it is. But let me quote, I pulled up a quote here. Unfortunately, if my screen share worked, I could show it to you, but I have to read it. So in the rulemaking process in 2013, here's one of the statements that came back. There was the very comment you gave was filed from the public to the DoD to say, this is why this shouldn't be allowed to happen. The DoD's response was, and I quote, "The contractor's size classification is not a sufficient reason to allow a contractor to fail to protect technical information." So if you think the DoD is going to back down because you say, hey, small companies can't do this. By the way, when I was in a conference at which John Ellis, the former director of DIBCAC, was speaking, this was in April in Tampa, he said, people say small companies can't do this. He said, of the companies that we have assessed from DIBCAC, the most elegant implementation of this was by a company that had 5 employees. 5, count them, 5. Now, you know what? If you've got 5 engineers who are doing brilliant design, they're probably pretty high end. They're probably getting paid more than $50 an hour, right? And so you got 5 of those guys and they're working in a small office. They can afford to do a really elegant implementation. Whereas if you're making, like you said, the twist ties, maybe not. Maybe there isn't the profit margin there.
Yeah. And I'm glad, thank you for answering that. I hope I didn't put you on the spot, or I wasn't trying to, be confrontational or anything.
Well,
let's just
open it up a little bit. So level 1 is still self-attestation. You don't have to go.
Yes.
So you don't have to go through. So you still have that level of self-attestation for the low levels. You can just say, I'm level 1 compliant and move forward.
Oh,
whether you are or not.
Yeah, that certainly makes it a little easier, because you can, not that you should lie, but you can have more, interesting ways of solving the control, right? That 5-person company, I don't know if they have Active Directory or if they just have 5 individuals with, 5 laptops that are not integrated in single identities and stuff like that. But interesting. The final question I have, Linda, a couple questions from chat that I'd love to ask here. So it is a DoD thing, but James asked in the beginning, is there any indication that other government agencies will adopt CMMC?
Very much so. Very much so. The GSA, General Services Administration, has put CMMC language in a couple of very large contracts. I don't, right off the top of my head, I can't rattle them off, but we're talking like $50 billion contracts, a couple of them. So yes, GSA, and also the Department of Homeland Security has indicated that that CMMC is, quote, very interesting for other agencies. So civilian agencies are also, in this space. So what's driving this, as I said, is the controlled unclassified information, the CUI. The Department of Defense is not the advocate for CUI within the federal government. There's an executive order that said that the guardian, if you will, for CUI in the federal government is the National Archives. And so National Archives is expected, again, this calendar year. There's still a lot going to happen in 2022. But this calendar year, we're expecting a final rule on CUI. And we're expecting that rule actually to require that 800.171, which by definition is the minimum protection required for CUI, that minimum protection is in every contract that uses CUI across the entire federal government. That's what we expect National Archives to say. Now, that's not the DoD, that's National Archives.
Okay. That's good. Thank you. So I mean, I think it's a fine standard of minimum security. Like I said, I think for smaller businesses, it could be challenging if they don't have the guidance. But like I always thought FISMA was overwhelming, frankly, and not necessarily risk-based control, but like a one-size-fits-all kind of approach to make it easier for management. Lupe had one final question. And then I have a final question for you. Do contracts with subcontract, is there a flow down? And does it need to be, is it required by the prime to flow down in contractual language to the subs?
100%.
I think that's your question.
Yes. Yes.
All right. There
all
it
of
is.
it. Level 1. I mean, and that's in the current, it's already in the contracts now. It's not, that doesn't just start with CMMC. That's been true since at least 2017.
Perfect. And
now,
then
some companies
question.
have been dealing with these requirements. I mean, my anchor client has been dealing with these requirements since 2008. They needed to do cybersecurity for certain defense contracts that they had.
My final question, Linda, is it accurate to say that there is going to be a renaissance of GRC positions in the near future, in the next 12 to 18 months, just to fill the work and demand that's going to be coming out of having to understand whether or not you are compliant and then get ready for attestation and then doing the independent audits?
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, I don't think of myself as a GRC professional per se. I got interested in this whole area because it seems to take the accountability of third-party audit or assessment to get companies even serious about cybersecurity. If we can get them doing this much, then we can often get the business decision makers to say, okay, for an extra 5%, investment, I get stuff like Eric was talking about, where, you get protection from ransomware because you got better backups and that sort of thing. So is it GRC? What we know is that even in these minimum requirements in 800.171, about 80% of the requirements are people and process, and really only 20% are technology. So whether you lump that into GRC, organizational change, I mean, to me, it's just flat out good business leadership and business management to put more attention on people and process than technology. And yes, we're going to need people who can do that and speak CMMC.
I love it. I don't know. I was just about to flip it to Eric and he disappeared. So that's fine. I'm a huge GRC person. I find it interesting, and maybe a conversation for another time, Linda, that you don't identify as a GRC person. But I'd be curious how you do identify from a security practitioner perspective. Do you
I'm a
see yourself
strategist. I'm a strategist. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, if there are any more questions for Linda, drop them in chat. We'll kind of do a circle back at the end. We've just taken the agenda and thrown it out the window because this conversation was so interesting and so compelling. Eric, I hope our radar items are a quarter as good, or else we're going to look silly.
Mine's not.
We should have had Linda come on, do her radar last. Jeez. So great work, Linda. But now let's flip it to Eric. Eric, what's on your radar?
Ransomware. So in the news today, it was put out that Conti was officially shutting their doors from any further operations, after they've gone off and, did their massive attack on Costa Rica and have pretty much declared, a cyber war against certain nations that they are, I guess, feeling the pressure. So they have pretty much said, okay, we're just going to shut down our operations. They still have their name and shame site up. They still have their negotiations page up. So any existing people that have already been breached, they can definitely go through and do what they got to do to try to get their files back and stuff like that. But they're not, quote unquote, taking on new clients. You know, F you people, they're not clients, you breach them. Anyway, but
that's a really, they're so funny how Wizard Spider or Conti ransomware gang operates as like a legitimate business with, we have HR and we have strategic goals and we're investing some of our profits back into the business for refinement. It's funny.
Oh yeah, they've got customer service too.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
I've had several encounters with them, but anyway, so when you take a look at Conti as a whole and their quote unquote business lifespan, you know, they have worked with many other ransomware groups. They've worked with Hive, they've worked with Black Cat, they've worked with some other ones. And, you know, me and my buddy Shiva that do another podcast, we've always said, you know, it's like they move from one cubicle to another. It's like this week I'm Conti, but I'm going to move over to this cubicle right now. Now I'm ReEvil, or I am the Hive, or I'm whatever. And it really seems like that because they have a coalition, if you will. They have communications in the back end where they're talking to each other. So there's even been some stuff that's been leaked out on the dark web where a lot of the quote unquote administrators of Conti are already talking about working at the Hive or Black Cat ransomware group. So, you know, while some of the administration will disband and go to other ransomware groups, we still think in the cybersecurity field that this is just going to be a rebranding, right? How do you throw off, you know, even U.S. sanctions and U.S. pressure, along with other, you know, the Five Eyes, if you will, of the world, to then rebrand? It's like, oh, we're not Conti anymore. We're, you know, we hug a lot of trees ransomware group, whatever the group you want to name yourself this week, right? So, you know, unless you actually, you know, are able to piece the puzzles back together to actually prove that this one particular person was part of that threat acting group, you're not going to be able to bridge that divide, if so to speak. So I don't want, you know, with that, and you've seen already many reports where ransomware attacks were down in Q1. I don't want businesses to have a solid of security, right? I'm a very big fan of this current administration and what they're doing on a lot of stuff. But I will say, credit where credit's due, the Biden administration has been very proactive in attacking threat actors. So I have seen more from the DOJ and the FBI and other three-letter agencies going more after these threat actors. So I do think there's a lot of pressure on them to be very covert and stop doing all the stupid crap that they're doing against infrastructure and freaking, you know, an entire country of Costa Rica would be nice. You know, I mean, that was a little extreme, but whatever. It's just really weird. So,
well, I have a couple things to ask about that. So from the Conti leaks papers, we saw that there was internal dialogue with them, basically indicating that they had top cover from the Russian government, right? I mean, whether it's true or not, that's what they were saying. As far as international investigations were going, there was, you know, something, I'm paraphrasing, but something along the lines of, we don't have to worry about that. We've got, you know, top cover from our government that, you know, they'll string them along and we'll be fine. Do you suspect that, because Conti, I mean, they're very, very wealthy, you know, $180 million. They have the big game hunting. They do double extortion. Do you think that they're doing a rebranding? Is it potential that they are, I don't want to say on the run, but because of what's going on in Europe and you know, Eastern Europe, that the focus of being able to help protect them from a top-down perspective, that those resources aren't there right now because they are focusing on other initiatives that are more important to the government, frankly, than protecting that ransomware group? Do you think that that's part of it, of why they're rebranding, or do you think it's just too hot for them?
Too hot. So you look at over the past couple of months, you know, before the attack on Ukraine, Russia allowed some operatives of ReEvil to get arrested. Now, it's been proven that those were not the top level people. The top level people are still there. They're just laying low. You know, Conti was still in massive operations because it was a ransomware as a service platform. So they just hired subcontractors to go breach out networks. So, they were full swing this entire war. So I don't think that their resources were being leveraged to attack Ukraine or any other nation state threat, against Russia. But it's anybody's guess, but I don't think so. I think the heat has just been too high, just like after, the gas pipeline and after, things with solar winds and Kaseya. Once you get to a certain notoriety, then you get too much heat on you and you just got to rebrand. You got to pull yourself back, and if memory serves me right, I know ReEvil did it, but I think Conti has done it as well, where they said they're just going to shut down and about 6 months later or less, they're back as their original identity again. So
yeah, well, according to the research, I may be mistaken, but my memory, it's called Conti because that's the ransomware that they're using, but they're Wizard Spider, and they were using the same TTPs, if you will, and it's believed that they were using Ryuk ransomware, and then this, whatever oh my god, my phone rings. The Sodinio Bico or whatever that ransomware. I always have trouble saying it. Yeah. And now it's Conti. Yeah. So, they can change their ransomware and stuff like that. But the one question I have, and then I'll stop dominating, Linda, if you have questions or contributions. But with the Bitcoin wallets that they're using, I mean, those are traceable and tieable, right? So, I mean, would they? Is there no way to trace it? Because they'll just get new ransomware wallets for the new Hive version of Conti, and they'll just slowly drain out the money that they collected under the Conti ransomware.
Okay, so the way that these things work, especially with Conti and ReEvil and some of the other larger threat actors, they have, when you're going through negotiations, once you make a payment, you are automatically provided an decryption tool. But each client that they've breached has their own wallet. And that's how their automated system determines that you've made a payment. So, if you are ABC company, no, I don't want to do it because that's a liquor store down here south. If you're ilovemuppets.com and your site got hacked and they wanted 2 Bitcoin, there was a specific wallet that was set up for ilovemuppets.com to make your ransomware payment, and that kind of automates the entire thing, just kind of like paying your electric bill or water bill or whatever utility you want. So the back end, they would use tumblers. So they would go in and do a bunch of tumblers to go to their master wallet. So that's why it's so hard for the DOJ and some of the other 3-letter agencies. I mean, they'll get it. It takes some time, but it's hard for them to, fully track. It's not like a one-to-one translation of that transaction.
That's good to know. Linda, thoughts?
Yeah.
Linda, any thoughts on that?
So this is so not my first rodeo, but when I see how these gangs are reinventing themselves or rebranding themselves, and it goes by different names, right? And yet there are maps out, right, that you could find that shows just how they've evolved the different ones over time and so forth. So it's really like no big secret that the piece parts keep just getting reconfigured and the action keeps going. To me, what comes up is a movie that actually came out well before I was born, Casablanca, right? Where there's this, first of all, it's like I'm totally shocked. There's gambling going on here. I'm totally shocked. And round up the usual suspects. I mean, do you really see this as being different from some of the same MO that was happening before our grandparents were born, for crying out loud?
No, it's just a different landscape.
Right.
I mean,
it's just different technology. I mean, that's the thing about phishing too, right? It's the same kind of scams that were run back in the Middle Ages. It's just the technology is new and the questions they ask are new. But it's the same damn stuff.
Yeah, I never watched Casablanca. My mom was a huge fan of it, just get a little personal. So she would watch it every other couple of weekends or whatever, and I'd just run from the freaking hills because I just couldn't stand the freaking thing. But, if you just take your traditional mob movie, if you will, you had your Goodfellas that were in the bar or in the club, and they had their little lynchmen that were, watching the street corner for the fuzz and everything. It's kind of like that, so you got your good fellas that are inside, they're doing all the administration, they're doing the customer service, they're doing all this other stuff. You got your lynchmen going out there and breaking kneecaps and stuff. But now it's fully autonomous. You can completely go on the Tor network and start fuzzing people's networks and try to hide yourself, and the transactions are autonomous as well. So,
well, one of the famous phrases is round up the usual suspects.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, see, that's just it. Round up the usual suspects, because those same guys are going to be the ones that, they're going to walk around the block and come back the other side wearing a different hat.
It's funny.
Yeah.
It is really funny how the more things change, the more they stay the same. It'd be an interesting bit of research.
Because human nature, right? The common thread is human nature. By the way, how you started this segment by talking about how these guys, they run their enterprises like traditional business.
Yeah.
Well, there's another thing that happens in traditional business pretty extensively. It's called check the box. Right? So if they get heat, so we'll check the box, we'll make it look like we went away. So whoever's taking heat, but can say, oh, we got rid of them. And then they walked around the block and they put on a different hat and they're back playing the same games. Yeah. Because human nature is the same common thread.
Yeah. That REvil bust is the perfect case study of that, where they had, the SWAT team with the body cameras, doing the raid, and announced it on the international news, international pub theater of, we took down the mastermind of REvil, and REvil's been, decapitated and all that. And, to Eric's point earlier, they took down some mid-level managers,
Mm-hmm.
Perfect for rebranding, and everybody gets, you get the press conference where mission success, or mission accomplished, right?
It's led to believe, at least some folks that are smarter than me in the InfoSec community, that most of the infrastructure that was part of REvil that was still there just shifted over to Conti. That's how they just exploded over the past 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, it's going to take a much more. Yeah, it's. I don't know. It's almost like half measures nowadays. I mean, we're able to, it's like whack-a-mole, right? I mean, you can take care of it, but they come right back up. So you need a stronger punishment or a way to get at those individuals who are executing at the top level of those organizations, and make it painful for them to operate, or make it unsafe for them to operate wherever they are, before things will change. I mean, it's the reason that ransomware, in my opinion, is the number one threat. Like, you should almost, businesses and programs should almost have two parallel programs running. One is your traditional cybersecurity program for 171 compliance or for basic, cybersecurity protection. And then one is like the inverse, where it's like ransomware. What are we doing? What are we doing? Is it enough? Is it enough? Like, bottom up for any situation, and then top down for ransomware. It's that pervasive and that devastating a cyber attack that you have to give it that level of credence.
Yeah, I mean,
I would say, in addition to ransomware, we also need one for advanced persistent attacks.
We need that more than just ransomware. I mean, we need to get to a point where businesses are adopting a baseline level of security. I still scream, CIS controls version 8. Make every company who is going to renew or file for an insurance policy, you must have CIS controls in place. Make it mandatory before you write a freaking policy. That's the easiest way to make everybody compliant. Even though I know you have some insurance policies that are brokers and underwriters that won't require it, but if you can get the majority of the big people to actually require this and submit that information over, it's going to make everybody a whole lot more more secure. And this whole thing reminds me of an old book that I read that's like 20 pages long that you guys may have read, of Who Moved My Cheese. So
I've heard of it, haven't read it.
Yeah. So it's crazy. I mean, and I think there was something out that I seen a couple of days ago where like 98% of the SMB market has suffered some sort of breach of some sort of manner. Whether it's just business email compromise, credit cards are being stolen, data is being leaked in some way, shape, or form, to all the way to the crippling ransomware attacks that has taken already out one college. That's like, yeah, we're just done. That
Yeah.
you covered, first couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and I've seen some healthcare practices go under. It's and that was like a few years ago, but still gross. Um, so yeah, we'll see. We'll keep on. We'll just assume that they're going to keep rebranding and doing devastating stuff. I will say that they're probably going to stay away from federal IT a little bit. Like they hit Colonial Pipeline, which isn't federal IT, but it got the eyes of the U.S. federal government, and within like 72 hours, they got the money back, which never happens in ransomware.
Yeah,
So,
which tells me that they were knee deep monitoring those guys to begin with, right? So, yeah.
absolutely. Well, allow me to shift and talk about what's on my radar. So on my radar, guys, this one isn't necessarily something that's particularly relevant to my day-to-day operations, but I covered this particular story like a couple weeks ago on First Things First, and it's really around the open source security foundation and the securing of open source software. Now, back in January, the Biden administration, they held kind of like a summit, if you will, with big tech. I think 90 different big tech companies were there, like leaders from all the big tech companies, and several, DHS, NSA type people to have a conversation about open source security. And the reason was, or the catalyst for this event was Log4j. Now, famously, if you recall, Log4j was found to have like this ridiculously easy way to exploit vulnerability that was discovered about December 17th, 2021. And like the internet was on fire. We covered it extensively. I made a video on Simply Cyber showing you exactly how to exploit it. And this freaked everybody out because this was a piece of technology that was written by 3 volunteers and basically maintained with duct tape and bubble gum. And the reality is that many of the top tech in the world, right, leverages, no problem. So a lot of this tech leverages open source software. So these wealthy big tech companies are selling products or selling ads or selling data or whatever. They're making filthy money, and they're leveraging free open source software, which is introducing all these bugs. So what has happened is these companies, these big tech companies in a public-private partnership have committed $150 million. It says $30 million here, but that's just the beginning. They actually go on to commit $150 million, all said, to basically introduce staff and stuff around security of open source software. So they're going to invent or develop tools that look for bugs and stuff like that. Now, open source security is open source software is huge, right? GitHub has like 1 billion different people in it. So how do they choose what to do? This is a really interesting thing. So hold on one second. I just want to, this is the final thing and then I'll open it up because it's quite fascinating. This program right here, Harvard, the Harvard University, their core infrastructure initiative released this census program too. And you can go and download the report here, see Laboratory for Innovation Science at Harvard. And it basically analyzes all of the open source software that's deployed in production code and basically highlights the ones that are most often used. So it might not necessarily be the most mission critical, but it's the most used, most widespread adoption, largest footprint. And that's the one that they are going to focus on with this program of basically looking at it and investing it. Now, the weird thing is, where does that $150 million go? Who's responsible? Obviously, Amazon, Google, everyone. They have departments working on this, so they might even be donating money to pay themselves back. I can get cynical, obviously. I know we have only a couple minutes, so I do want to open it up for thoughts and stuff. Linda, I know you have a hard stop. Any thoughts around this approach to open source software and the obvious rush to secure it?
Wow. So, I mean, this is an exciting area, and I know probably, first of all, it's a very deep area. I've had in my career, I spent about 4 years creating COTS software and being, responsible with having those kinds of responsibilities. But I have to say that the vast majority of my career has not been in the software development area, and I deeply respect the professionalism of those folks. What I'm seeing coming, though, is tools, both tools to see where, how frequently certain things are used, and the cross references. A lot more calls for transparency that I think it sounds like are being answered. So it feels like there's a lot of restructuring going on that is hopefully very positive and will, sunshine, and in the true sense of open source, where proprietary things and the incorporation of other resources in software, the modular reuse of software, it becomes more transparent truly what's baked in. But where, how fast that's going, and I not very well tuned into that, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, it's good. And before I flip it to Eric for his thoughts, I mean, it makes me think of all the supply chain controls that are now in the NIST CSF that are showing up for CMMC compliance. I mean, if you're putting open source software in your solution, how far down the rabbit hole do you go to prove security? Or is it just one tier? You're like, oh, we bought that COTS. Well, the COTS product actually has this open source product, Log4j, that's vulnerable. So now you've got this baked in vulnerability. You didn't do a good job, and now you're no longer CMMC compliant. Eric, any thoughts on this public-private sector initiative, the $150 million, and if it's going to be, rainbows and unicorns, or just more pub?
Yeah, I don't have a seatbelt strapped into my chair today. But
well, let's keep it 2 minutes because Linda's got a hard stop, and I want to make sure to send everybody off.
Yep. So here's the 30,000 foot view. You have all these companies who are putting together or bringing the publishing software that's using open source. Great, love it, but they're not maintaining the open source code. So I can tell you at least 13 applications that I know are using legacy open source. So like the creator of the open source product or the repo has fixed bugs and advanced at 13, 14, 15 versions, but they're not updating their original source code because it's going to break their product. Yep. So when are we going to have companies actually audit their actual open source repos that they're leveraging, make sure they're current? That's a bigger problem than anything else. So they're just leaving open doors, like you said.
Yeah, nothing illustrates that more than Android OS getting forked by all these different, middle tier vendors, and then they can't support when they upgrade from KitKat to ice cream or lollipop to marshmallow. And because if you apply the Google update, it'll break all the dependencies that they baked in for their own hardware. So they just don't do that. So, all right, dude, this was awesome. We're right at the hour. I know we had a disparate amount of time for each thing, but I really think we focused on one of the most important topics, the CMMC stuff, simply because of the timeline and how frequently it's coming, how rapidly it's coming. Linda, any call to action, anything to share, projects you're working on, or how people can connect with you?
I invite folks to follow me on LinkedIn, and I'm increasingly posting on securethink.com in the field notes section as well when LinkedIn constrains me on content. So yeah, I'd love to be in touch with your audience. That'd be great.
Okay, cool. And this is Linda's LinkedIn. So it's just Linda Rust. So go connect with her. She's always posting good stuff. I will admit I post more than once a day. So maybe I'm getting squashed by the algorithm, but I'm kind of annoying like that. Eric, any calls to action or things that you want people to connect with you on?
No, just follow us on LinkedIn or YouTube or whatever. And if you got some time, start poking around your network. Make sure you can identify everything that's in there. Start auditing yourself.
Yeah, a lot of IoT devices you may not realize are there.
Yeah, we covered that a lot last week too. So,
oh, I like it. All right. So thank you so much to our panel and to our chat for being here today. Great question, guys. Great conversation. If you got value out of the show, help a friend out by sharing with your social media network a link to this stream and your honest thoughts about it in the comments, right? Hey, this is a great thing. Check it out. Or, hey, CMMC was cool, but what Jerry said, not so cool. I don't know. We'd like to reach as many people as possible that we think that you think can benefit from these conversations. That's why we're having it. I love talking to Eric and Linda, but we can do that offline. We do it live, streamed, so it can help the community. Go to simplycyber.io/streams to find out about all the upcoming Simply Cyber content. Thanks, everybody, and have a great weekend.